Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, may I have your attention, please? Are you ready to engage in a mind-blowing experience and hear talks about life, technology, entertainment, and business? The next episode of HIPTHER Talks starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Hello, good day, good evening, good morning, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of HIPTHER Podcasts. Today we are having two guests with us today in the person of Jason Baker and Scott Smith. They are both co-founders of Do Not Peek. Welcome, guys. Really much appreciated that you took the time to join us to what we hope to be an interesting discussion. I'm gonna pass you the virtual microphone and kindly ask you to introduce yourself, to give us a little bit of insight about what you are doing, what's the background story of the company. Welcome, and which one of you wants to grab the mic?
I guess I'll go first. I tend to be the talker of the two. We're a very Penn and Teller type crew. I'm a big talker. He does all the heavy lifting. So I'm Scott Smith, so Scoots. Jason and I, both managing directors of Do Not Peek. We do a little personal introduction. Obviously, first, big gamer, been a gamer all my life. I'm mid-50s now. So for me, growing up gaming, that means starting in arcades with the Atari machines at home, the early consoles, but been a gamer all my life. So I've progressed through all the systems, consoles, PC, all that kind of stuff. So big gamer. And then mid-20s, right after Half-Life came out, I realized that not only could you be a big video gamer, but there was a whole world of competitive video gaming where people were playing each other competitively. And obviously that was happening before my light bulb went off. But really, Counter-Strike is the game that made me realize that there's a whole world of people that aren't slaying dragons and doing other kind of video game stuff. They're literally just playing video games against each other, right? And obviously the fighting game community has been doing this in arcades for a very long time, but I played like single player games in arcades. So for me, this whole world of what we now call esports kind of dawned on me, and it was long before we called it that. And in that same game, I bumped into Jason. We shared a love for Counter-Strike. And you know, my story weaves in and out of his several times in our careers, but basically I started working and playing on a team in the game of Counter-Strike. We called them clans back then. And I went to a couple events in Dallas, Texas with my team to play everybody else. And I bumped into Jason, who was there doing roughly the same thing with his group of friends, but he was also making content. He was filming stuff, doing interviews, and I was just there playing and screwing around with my friends. And out of that, we stayed in touch. We started working for a company together called GotFrag, which was a media company at the time, kind of covering the Counter-Strike scene, kind of like ESPN would cover football. We were covering Counter-Strike. Again, no money, no sponsorships. Everyone loved the game, writing articles, doing all this kind of stuff. I then went from that, we went to GotFrag for a little while. We won't delve too deep into the history of it, but it got kind of closed around us. GotFrag went away. I went into the team game and became a real team owner, and I was one of the owners of a team called Evil Geniuses for several years, still around, top North American brand right now. Did that for a couple years. I would say checked that off of my gaming esports bucket list of running a team and seeing what it was like behind a team. That team, coincidentally, about a year and a half after I left, got bought out by Twitch. They were a Twitch team for a while, and the parent company of Evil Geniuses got bought. So made a little money on my paper, I guess, Alex, is what I would say there. And then again, but Jason and I, always friends, always intermingling. In between all this, I was doing some freelance broadcast work. After GotFrag, we both freelanced, directing, producing shows for other people, right? Taking a day wage and going sitting in someone else's control room or somebody else's truck or helping them do a run a show. I was doing that. Jason went away for a while, came back. He was doing that. And I'll let Jason tell his side of it. But basically, after EG, I leave that. I'm freelancing for a while. I literally, out of the EG money, just decided to retire for a while and just do what I want to do, not be beholden to work. Now, in the midst of all this, Alex, my real career, my real job was actual event logistics for corporate clients. So I was doing a World Cups for Coca-Cola, Olympics, like the Olympics are happening right now for Coca-Cola. That was my 9-to-5 job, although it wasn't a 9-to-5 job. That's what paid the bills so I could spend my hobbyist, passionate sweat equity in esports and in gaming stuff, right? Took a very long time for Jason and I to do anything in gaming that actually paid any sort of bills for us. So I start, I retire, and then I get a weird kind of cold call from a studio here in Scottsdale, Arizona, that is very interested in a production company, basically unrelated to gaming and esports. You film commercials there, you can do all sorts of stuff. And they reach out to me and they're like, hey man, we heard from a friend of yours that you're the guy that knows all about esports and broadcasting. And we know as a production company with sound stages and stuff, we should care about this, and they're like right down the street from me. And I'm like, who are you? What do you, I don't even know you exist. Right. But yeah, I can come meet with you and make sure you don't get screwed. Right. There is a method to this story. So I go down, I meet with this company in Scottsdale, Arizona, and they are a brick and mortar studio. And they're like, we've heard the buzzwords of esports. We've heard the buzzwords of gaming content, and we know who Incze is, and Twitch is really popular, and YouTube is huge. What should we do? And it led in basically like a consulting conversation. Like, yeah, maybe I'll consult with you guys. I'm retired, but you're right down the road. You got a nice facility. Let me kick this around, and I'll get back to you. And I go home and I reach out to my friend Jason. I point this way because he's like right there, right, in our office. So for you at home, like, why is he looking that way? And I call Jason. I go, dude, like, you're not going to believe this, because Jason had lived here for a while in Phoenix, Arizona. We had done some esports out of here. He had visited plenty of times. And one of our Got Frag things was we had a little studio here. Anyway, but that was 5+ years ago. So I'm like, this is just really cool, dude. I can't believe this is down here. I might consult with them. This is great. Jason proceeds to tell me, well, shit, dude. Can I swear? Too late. He goes, well, I am freelance consulting for an investment company that owns a couple things in esports and gaming and is interested in maybe opening a studio somewhere. And Jason's like, I'm figuring out what kind of gear they should buy, what city they should do this in, what level they should do it. And I'm like, wait a minute. We might have a synergy here, right? Synergy. Because I'm still thinking I'm just going to freelance, and consult, right? I'm like, well, wait a minute. These guys are thinking about gaming and esports, and they have a studio. You're thinking about gaming and esports and need a studio. Like, what are you doing? What do you need the studio for? Why do you need it? Long story short, Alex, it leads to a conversation with myself, Jason Baker, and a guy by the name of Steven Sauls, who is the head of Rivalry, and at the time the head of GG Group, which is another little company, instead of investors. And I'm like, what do you all need? What do you want? Right. And basically Rivalry has a lot of creators out there that they invest money in for sponsorship content, all this kind of stuff. And they are thinking about maybe they should have a home, and maybe content is a way to make money, and having a production company in our space makes sense. So it kind of, in the midst of like a couple conversations, it turns into, from me consulting these guys and maybe they have a studio, to us deciding to open Do Not Peak and put it in a studio, and me coming out of retirement with Jason, because I basically kind of stole it. I'm like, wait a minute. Okay, what are you doing? Why don't we just start a company? I'll come out of retirement. You already got Jason. I like you, Steven, already, because I had met Steven before. Why don't we do this idea, but go for it? Open a broadcast production company inside someone else's physical studio, so you don't have to spend millions of dollars on the facility. You could spend millions of dollars on the actual content creation, talent, labor pool, the staff, all that other stuff. So long story short, lots of gaming stuff, a lot of broadcast stuff, a lot of team stuff for me, a lot of media stuff for me, and event logistics stuff for me in the real world led me to my side of opening Do Not Peak Entertainment with Jason. Long ranty about me, I guess, and a little bit of how we got to Do Not Peak.
Okay, that was fruitful. That had a lot of details.
It's like 20 years right there, Alex. Okay. 1999 Counter-Strike came out.
Oh my God. Jason, do you have something to add on this historical side of things?
Yeah, on the historical side, like, I started out with me and my friends going. There used to be yearly, like every 6 months, there used to be big tournaments, and back in like early 2000s, and me and my friends would go to these events and we'd play in it, and we started bringing a video camera and filming it, and we just kind of started just growing from there, of like doing 1 video a day to 3 videos a day, to one of the things that Scott and I started working with when we met was, well, how can we do this live? And we did some of the very first early live streaming on the internet with video games, and setting up how to show the game correctly, not just, oh, we're showing a video game, but actually like building anticipation. Like there's a guy around the corner, oh, you can see this other guy coming, and now the point of view of the 2 people meeting, and then just the result. So we started building that up, and that's one of my favorite things to actually work on, is building that in-game storytelling. And it's something that we became really good at, and like lots of people copied that from back, in 2006 and on. From there, which is like, it's the logical way to do things, so I'm glad they copy it. I took a quick break for a little while when kind of like 2008, like esports died for a little bit. Like everybody thinks of like when League of Legends blew up and StarCraft blew up, but it kind of like, there was like this big industry, and then it died with the housing crash of 2008. So it kind of slowly ramped back up, and everything that was ramping up, I wasn't interested in at all. I just wasn't interested in StarCraft. I wasn't interested in League of Legends too much. So I took a break, and then all of a sudden people just started calling me, hey, Jason, you want to come work on this? Hey, Jason, you want to come work on that? And it kind of led to doing some stuff for MLG for their big Counter-Strike major. I did Turner Sports. They did their E-League product on their network. So I ended up doing all the first 3 seasons for that broadcast, plus their first major. And then I helped launch the Overwatch League. So it just kept on going and going and going. So that was a lot of fun. And then I went back to freelancing again, and, living on the road is not a very fun life. Like, oh yeah, we're going to be in Brazil this week, and then next week you're going to be in Miami, and you got a whole new crew you got to work with and bring everybody up to speed, and none of the tech works because we just wired it in the day before, and we're live in 30 minutes and we're not sure if it's going to work, and you're sitting there like stressing out of that. It's like, nowadays we have a studio, so it's like we know everything works, we get to test it out weeks in advance, and it's a better lifestyle.
I see. So I got the general idea about why esports broadcast production. I got the general idea on how DMP starts. By the way, can I use DMP? Do you use it like this, or it's do not peak?
Yeah, either. Obviously,
okay.
Once we start talking about, you can say DMP. It's fine.
Oh,
That's what
okay.
we do in terms
So
yeah.
We know how that started, but what exactly is DMP doing? What exactly are you producing?
Sure. So a culmination of things, right? So much like our histories bring us together doing a variety of stuff, I would say the majority of the content that Jason and I created over the years for other people was live broadcast esports. You're doing matches, you're in arenas, you're in studios, the actual sport we're part of the broadcast of, right? And so we're really good at that. And we're really good at anything live. Like we do 2 live talk shows right now that are more like news shows with B-roll, right? So part of Do Not Peak is to bring that skill set, us and our staff, and our control room experience to anyone who wants to hire us. So we are a services company. So you could do all the creative yourself, all the elements, all that. We can just come push the buttons for you and be a turnkey solution for live broadcast, whether it's a show, whether it's an esport, or anything like that. Also, we do lean into live to tape or live where you're recording to then post produce. So basically anything to do with gaming and esports, we can either do live for you, or we can create, we help people with YouTube series they're never live. It's all post produced stuff. Right. It's kind of a culmination. The idea behind it was kind of what Jason alluded to. We got tired of working for other people and traveling. We wanted a home base, and we wanted the gear to have a home base, because half the battle whenever you're traveling on your road show of an event is like shit goes wrong. Has to get wired and unwired constantly. And it's all that stuff, all those hours that you just really don't have to worry about. Yeah, things still go wrong in a building, but like, it's just a whole different, like, you can really worry about the creative of stuff and less about, oh God, we had to work till 2:00 because we just got the venue late because the concert got out late, and they did the monster. I worked at an event where they did a rodeo the week before, a rodeo. That venue smelled like crap. Like, literally, you can't get that smell out. So just stuff like, I don't want to deal with any of that, right? I'm Tangin It D. So we're a hired gun company, like we always were. But instead of traveling and getting into someone else's truck, we're going to bring your needs to us, right? Come rent our stuff, rent us in our building. We're going to do some really cool stuff because we've got really cool stuff here, right? And I think right next to a services company, because again, tons of companies are services production companies, right? We're gaming and esports specific, right? There's tons of companies that you can go rent a soundstage, bring all your own stuff, but we're all also experts in the space of this kind of content creation, gaming and esports. Then on top of that, we make our own stuff. We are our own content creation company for our own needs. We have our own IP. We have our own shows that, people can advertise into or sponsor into, but that's our stuff, right? We're not just a third. Like a lot of production companies, you never know they exist, right? They are always hidden behind someone else's logos at somebody else's show. But so we do both. We'll hide, or we do the breakdown every Wednesday on Twitch. We're a Twitch partner. We have all our own stuff on YouTube. Like we're very face forward with our content, as well as we'll go behind the scenes and you can pay us to just do your thing. And no one will ever know we existed. We do both, I think, equally well.
Okay, so basically you're kind of a Swiss knife.
yeah, very much so. Very much so.
Really, really nice. What's the relationship between DMP and Bitfire Studios?
Sure.
How do these two go together?
So very much a partner with us. It's their studio we use when we film in the studio. So the facility, all the fanciness is theirs. They built the studio and we built our offices in the same building. So as they were renovating and doing the whole studio side, we were figuring out what we wanted to do with our office space. So we're the only tenant they have. There is nobody else in here but us and Bitfire. The building's about 16,000 square foot. And obviously, as part of that partnership, we get an amazing rate to use all the stuff that people off the street can't get. It's not necessarily free to use their cameras or their soundstage, but the pricing is obviously very, very advantageous because we're in the building. What I like to explain to people, it's much like how like sound stages and movie companies will work in Hollywood in a way. So you've got Warner Brothers Studios or Disney Studios, and they are Paramount. Paramount's in the news for us this week. So Paramount has a huge set of sound stages and an actual facility in LA, right? They run Paramount Studios. But within Paramount Studios, there's probably 10 production companies that have office space and have deals with Paramount Studios to use their facilities to make their content, right? And so it's kind of like that. We're embedded. We can make our content wherever we want. We make content without them. But much like the movie situation, is like we're embedded and we use their stuff at a cut rate deal. Where movies change is part of that deal is there's a distribution deal there too, right? Like obviously Seth Rogen makes movies on a soundstage for the company that he distros and publishes through. It's all part of a bigger chain. Bitfire is just a facility for us in that sense. We are coming up with co-branded ideas, and we're trying to figure out how we can work together because they're a production company. They also do their own IP. So it's kind of the best of both worlds for us. And where it gets kind of funny, without telling too much of our story, when I told our backstory that this whole thing started with a studio tour in Scottsdale, and hey, they want gaming and esports content, and you guys, Jason, want to maybe do a studio. That was a different studio, but that studio was run by the general manager of that studio at the time that we moved into is the owner of Bitfire. He left that studio, decided to do it himself. He bought a huge transmission company that does video and audio transmission. And then, so it's kind of, and he knocked on our door and said, hey, You want to come do that idea with us? And we're like, yes, please. And so it kind of best of both worlds. Same idea, better studio, better tech, cooler tech. It actually, instead of with an employee of that studio, actually the owner of a studio. So that's our relationship with them. Again, they're our partner. But not, I would say, in a financial sense. Like, in all honesty, we don't own a piece of Bitfire. Bitfire doesn't own a piece of Do Not Peak. But we work together on all sorts of stuff. If we do a charity thing, I'll be like, Bob, can we get stage 2 for free because we're doing this thing? And be like, yeah, play my commercial, right? So very, very awesome partnership. Again, we just moved in. They just opened in October of this year. Brand new building, like still squeaking, still a new car in here. We are really, really excited for this stuff.
For all our listeners, I have a piece of info here. The new facility Scott was talking about has around 60,000 square feet. That's roughly around 1,500 square meters, and that's a lot.
Yeah,
that's a lot. Jason, I want to touch ground on a little bit. Have you started working? Have you touched the AR, VR side of productions?
Yeah, it's actually funny because Scott has actually been doing more of the noodling than I have. So, see, I could have done the transmission services for Bitfire, but no, I think like the AR. Yeah, our stage for our weekly show, The Breakdown, is actually built in the Unreal Engine. It is a full virtual stage where we have an LED wall where we have the warehouse in the background, and then we have a front plane that's AR of fake TVs with broadcast signals in them. And it's like, why do a boring ESPN set with a nice stage and glass? And we're different. If we can do anything, why do what everybody else is doing? So the Breakdown show is in this old industrial warehouse. There's fire. There's actually a dumpster fire in the corner. There's old TVs piled up and mannequins and everything. And we could just pretty much manipulate and do whatever we want with that environment. We also did a live D&D show, Dungeons and Dragons show for Gamers Outreach. And we built all the levels of this Dungeons and Dragons story in the Unreal Engine. And so we made our trailers for it in the Unreal Engine. And then when there were people sitting on stage doing their story and they roll the dice and they solve the puzzle and the big door opens, the big door actually opens. When they fight the big boss at the end, he's there on the screen and Scott's actually controlling him with an iPad. And so like he's taking hits and he's dodging and he's swinging. And when he dies, he falls over. So we're just adding like the immersion to storytelling.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So except this really nice intertwining of virtual, augmented, and real reality, if that's even a thing. How are your production different, and how is DMP different than other broadcast companies?
You taking this from me? Well, I think our facility. And I think in the gaming esports space, especially, there are quite a few broadcast production companies of all sizes, very small ones, couple guys using vMix out of their bedrooms, mixing shows for people remotely, to bigger companies like us in buildings and facilities, right? So there's all kinds, especially during the pandemic when a lot of stuff just in general went remote, a lot of esports went remote, a lot more people got into it. You can get into doing remote production very inexpensively, depending on what quality you want with stuff like vMix and, those kind of things. So I think our advantage is very few, if any, production companies in gaming and esports are in a building like this in a facility. They can go rent one. They can go down the street in LA somewhere and get somebody else's, but they can't walk 20 feet to an XR cube. Nobody in our space can do that right now. Now, we won't hold that forever because this tech is coming and it's replacing green screen and all sorts of things for all sorts of people. So we won't hold on to that badge for very long. But again, there is no like there's no gaming production company that's in a building like this in our anywhere. Now ESL, who is a big tournament organizer and a content creation company, has facilities in Germany, and they do have a big green screen soundstage and all these things. You know, there are contemporaries, but I think the turnkey solution, and I hate that word because it is kind of overused, but like ESL is also not rentable, right? In the sense of this is kind of rentable. We have a turnkey boutique studio right down the hallway with hair and makeup and all those things you need as a client, plus us attached with 12 employees to help you deliver your show, create your show. Again, I think my fingers crossed that we hold on to this little like niche for a while, because the wall is really expensive, right? So I'm hoping that people just rent the wall from other people for a while and don't want their own wall. And again, I just think that we provide, between us and our staff, decades of live esports and gaming content production. You know, our TD, Ian, has worked for 10 plus years on more shows than both of us combined, because that's all he did for years was push buttons for other people, right? But in this space. So again, very Swiss Army knife, and this building is literally exceptional right now. Exceptional.
Really nice. What are the, well, just tell us a little bit about some of your recent projects. The most recent one, but before that, I do have one delicate question. How did the pandemic situation affected your work?
Unfortunately, unfortunately, right? So I think for us, it turned out just fine. Like, thank God, knock on wood. So on a health front, on a employee, everyone healthy, and we all got through it so far in that sense. So very grateful that our staff, you know, everyone on a personal level didn't get sick, family members, etc. Company wise, very unfortunate for us, because again, the timeline of our company was about the summer before the pandemic. So in 2019, we start announcing Do Not Peak. We move into our first studio. We start pressing that. We start hiring people. We hire 3 different staff members here in town. We start the Breakdown, my weekly news show. We get about 8 or 9 episodes into that. We get into that new year, 2020. And in March, the pandemic hits, right? And we're very much in startup mode as a business, right? And what we decided as a company was focus on content and that side of our startup, not on the business side. So we hadn't hired biz dev. We hadn't even hired social media or anything like that. We're hiring the people to help us make the content, right? Creatives over business, right? Because we'll get that going and then we'll hire biz dev. We'll get social going in a way to us, most important thing is what we're here to do, which is make the content. So start doing that. Well, pandemic hits us. Studio goes into lockdown. We all go remote. So where that hurts us is the one thing we're making is a studio-based show, right? Studio closes for a while. I have a 91-year-old mom. At the time, she was 89. Has emphysema, very old, very frail. Like, if she gets COVID, that's the end of it, right? So we decide, okay, we're just going to stay remote for a while, right? The studio does start figuring out like COVID protocols, like every other studio, how we do it, how we test. This is all pre-vaccine, obviously, but we're all like, you know what? We're going to put the Breakdown, which is the show that we were doing, on hiatus. I don't want to do it remotely on a web camera. It's done in an Unreal Engine. It was really sexy and cool. We're not going to downgrade that show just to do a show. But what happens is Valorant gets dropped by Riot, right? A brand new FPS, right? Brand new freaking FPS gets dropped, right? So we go, well, shit, let's do something. And thankfully, again, this leans to our investor and Steven and the guy, our other partner, who was very understanding that, hey, man, we're opening. Do Not Peak is a studio-based badass production company. When you lose your studio, you got to rethink things for a little while, right? So we just kind of went into hiatus mode. Like, we're not going to hire any more people. We're going to not try to spend, kind of save our money. Not, don't have a studio. What can we do in the meantime? Well, we can do a vMix We got people that can do vmix, and let's jump on a Valorant weekly show. This game will probably take off. Riot's never done an FPS. It has taken off, right? I started hosting it right away because I wasn't doing anything. I'm like, let's host a Valorant show. Let's get some people going. Let's see if this thing has legs. We very quickly realized we wanted to do it weekly, but I wasn't going to follow the game in the sense that I should be the host. So that's what we started doing during the pandemic, is let's just buckle down. Let's wait this one out, keep everyone safe, and do this weekly show. And then we did that. Then we started doing same thing. What can we do remotely without a sexy studio? Well, let's do D&D. Let's do these role play shows, right? You can do these things. So we started a series of role play campaigns. We did decide to hire a guy during that. Joseph joined us, who's a DM of these campaigns, also a project manager, all sorts of stuff. But basically, we pivoted to try to stay inexpensive as possible, keep everyone on a payroll, keep everyone employed because people were losing their jobs. All of us came not too long ago from the world of freelance, right? Where you had to book days and all those arena shows went away, all that work went away. So we were all like, holy shit, I'm just glad our people have jobs. I'm glad we can keep people occupied and busy and make some content. So we did that. And then out of that, kind of funny, the studio conversations, they started asking us, hey, when do you guys want to come back? We're ready for you. And part of, without getting too much of the minutia, part of that studio deal was to grow into more square footage for our office. We need office space. We need to hire people. We want them all here. And during the pandemic, we started those conversations back up with that studio. The general manager had left since then, and we didn't like the way the conversation was going. They were trying to charge too much money. And we just said, you know what, we're not going to go back. We took the opportunity while we were in pandemic and remote to not go back. But then we were like, what are we going to do? We need a studio. We're a studio-based, cool, right? Literally within weeks of the decision of us, well, we're not going back there, but let's just keep making our content. Bob Sullivan, who is the owner of Bitfire Studios, reaches out, and he basically goes, hey, heard you guys aren't going back. Because he's well connected. He heard we weren't going back. And he's like, come see me. This is what I'm doing. And he proceeds to tell us that he's bought a transmission company that does X, Y, and Z. And he's got this huge building in North Phoenix. What do you want to do? Do you guys need space? What do you all need? And I said, well, we're going to need office space and we need a studio again. And he's like, well, I'm thinking about building a studio. And we're like, well, what are you putting in it? Are you putting an XR cube in it? Like, we literally talked him into the XR cube. He probably wouldn't have gone with the cube without us. And so it's a really kind of like silver lining story, I think, because we and the staff talk about it the whole time. We were able to hunker down, wait out what maybe would have ended up, if we stayed at that studio, being a really cumbersome, awkward. It was tough in that place, right? Great studio. Tough management is all I'll say. Tough management, right? And the people we loved that biz dev'd us had left the building. They were not there, right? And out of that, the guy we liked decided to open his own studio. We got an XR stage we didn't have before. We had different kind of Unreal green screen technology in the other studio, but we got everything we needed and then some, and a better relationship and a better partnership. And we were able to thankfully keep everyone employed, slowly grow during the pandemic, because what did help is viewership hours went up during the pandemic. A lot more people were watching stuff. Again, Valorant blew up. We've now poised ourselves at the longest running weekly Valorant show on the planet. Because we started it and we never stopped it, and that game is just going up and up and up, and our show is slowly going up and up in numbers. And so I think out of it came a better place. Like, I literally got to design the office I'm sitting in, right? Because again, this was an empty warehouse side of this building. We got to sit with the architect and go, okay, how many offices can we fit in? What do we want to do? What do we want to, and that wouldn't have happened at the old place. We would have wedged in to the existing office. So really weird thing to say, out of this really horrific global thing, we had a slower start. We're basically now in startup mode again. Like, hello, Lauren, we have a PR firm. We would have hired them, people like this, a year and a half ago, but we got pandemic, right? So we got really delayed with our big, because we got to the, hey, we got this really cool thing. we're doing it. We got some things going, but we never got to get a lot of clients into the building. We never got the services side going. But now, I smile every day I walk by our door because like we help design this place now, and like we help pick what's next door, and we didn't inherit anything. It just, much better place. Long rambly answer out of the pandemic. You know, we ended up with a better place. Jason, anything to add to that?
I think you just covered the entire history of our company.
Yeah, like 12 times. Lauren's probably, this is the first interview we've done with Lauren now as part of a PR. She's probably like, holy shit, I didn't talk to these guys.
No, you're doing it's great. I'm
okay.
learning even more.
All right, fair enough.
But honestly, I'm just fascinated. Like, basically, you had a rough kickstart on this, but eventually it is a silver lining story. So really glad that turned up well for you. Now, except the Valorant show and the D&D episodes, some other recent projects that you are working on. Can you give us some hints?
I guess we can tell you a little. Yeah. So obviously the 2 weekly shows are news shows, right? The Breakdown and Valorant are happening. And again, D&D we've done in the past, and we're noodling some pitch ideas to some companies to do some more campaigns. One of the things that we're delving into, nothing official yet, is we're looking at some of the Riot games that are not their most popular, because and figuring out if we can do some tournaments and some cups, right? Because Riot went from a game developer that has one game to a game developer with a whole bunch of games, right? And at our core, while we can sit around and wait for someone else to come to us and go, hey, we want to do a weekend cup with Wild Rift or TFT or Counter-Strike or whatever game I throw at you, right? We also, the cool thing about our space is as long as you get developer license and approval, you can throw your own tournament, right? Now, where you got to be careful is like Riot's not going to let us throw a League of Legends tournament because they take that IP and they put it in a franchise box, and tier 1 teams play in a NFL style system. So they don't let the world just throw League of Legends tournaments. But I can go to Riot and go, hey, we want to do a weekend TFT tournament for your team fight tactics things. Here's the format. Here's the kind of prize money we're going to throw at it. Here's what we're looking to do. Can we get a tournament license? And they'll ask you X, Y, and Z. And if they like it, they give you a license, and they don't charge for those kind of things, right? It's a free license, but they'll make you stay within certain parameters. Like Riot, for example, doesn't, no pornography sponsorships, no booze sponsorships, no gambling sponsorships. Every game developer and publisher looks at their game slightly different, and they have codes of conduct where they'll put their IP. So point being, very easy to throw the sport yourself in our world, right? You don't have to wait for someone else to hire you. So we are very much noodling those kind of things. Like, hey, what if we took this game that no one's doing a lot of stuff with? Like right now we're noodling some TFT ideas. Like, hey, we could throw a weekend cup. We could do this one-off thing, because it's very easy to kind of then go to a couple sponsors and go, hey, you want to throw in Logitech? Hey, do you want to throw in, depending on who you want to talk to? You can't really do that kind of stuff in mainstream sports, right? You can't. I guess you could go throw a basketball tournament, but you're not going to get NBA players. But in our world, we can throw these kind of tournaments and knock on all the influencer doors on Twitch and get the people that matter, right? Again, our space in the sense of like how you can use esports to make your own content is very unique, right? But not unique, right? Like you and I could throw a basketball tournament, right? You and I could just go get $100,000, decide we're going to rent this court down the street. We'll have pickup teams, but LeBron James isn't going to show up, right? The NBA players can't play in your thing, but there's a weird world that you can get the NBA players of certain esports and certain games in your little one-off tournaments, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
And so we're now that we're set, because again, we just moved in, we're just now getting settled with the tech, starting to figure out what it does do, what it can't do easily, how you build really cool stuff. And now you're going to start seeing us get beyond our weekly breakdown show and experiment a little bit. And ideally we want to experiment with revenue models that someone else is, sponsoring into as well. But we're not going to just sit and wait for someone to hire us to do their show idea. Because again, this space is so blessed that if you got a really neat idea, you probably can monetize it. And as long as you get the okay from mom and dad who own the game you're using, you don't need anyone else to help you. And again, you just can't do that in a lot of other places, right? That makes sense?
Yeah, it actually does.
Okay.
We are closing into the end of this episode, but I want to ask each one of you name three things that you love about what you're doing and three things that you hate.
Okay. I'll go first, Jason, so you can think about it. Three things I love about what I'm doing would be certainly working with my best friend, Jason. You know, we have such a long history of working together, but not in something that is really ours. Again,
now you just forced him to say the same thing at number one.
No, yeah. So yeah, working with Gino, being able to run a company and build this dream with Jason, being able to employ people. I didn't think about this till recently. You know, again, being a freelancer for so long and maybe having crew that work for you for that week or whatever, but they're not really your like that responsibility, but also that like absolute like pleasure in knowing that like I'm helping put money in people's pockets and they can buy food. And, you know, like again, being an employer is kind of new to me and I kind of dig it. Right. Mm-hmm. The third thing I think would be, since we're in gaming and we're on the cutting edge of stuff and we're able to be ultra creative, like having this XR stage and working in Unreal, like I'm not making commercials for a lawyer in town that needs some sort of, you know, got hit by a car. Like we get to make really cool shit for generally really cool people. Right. Those are my three things I love. What I hate, I think our space is still really, really immature. And I mean that in a financial sense. Like esports and gaming is spending a whole lot of venture capital money and we don't have a whole lot of revenue to back it up. Not necessarily in our world, but like what we cover, team ownership, tournament organizers, like esports is a big spend right now in the sense of the sport that we all care about. But the revenue's not there yet. So it's like, but the value, I just think it's a lot of smoke and mirrors still, which always scares me. Right. I hate, God, what else do I hate? Boy, I don't know. I'm a really cynical guy, Alex. So there's a lot of things I hate about our space. I think we have a lot of grifters, a lot of, you know, there's a lot of debate in our space about NFTs and blockchain and crypto right now. And so anytime it's mentioned, it's seemed as a scam or it's bullshit. And it's not always the case, but like all that has come hot and heavy and it always hits us in phases, right? Because everyone's trying to figure out how to make revenue, right? So 10 years ago, it would have been all the energy drinks found us, right? Then 5 years ago, all the betting sites found us, right? And now NFTs have found us and crypto has found us. And maybe we're actually inventing some of this on the gaming esports side. And that, while there's utility and there's coolness there in Web 3.0 and what that all will be, right now it's a whole lot of shadiness with that. That seems to be the overarching shit, rug pulls and the bullshit of it. Maybe one or two projects actually have utility and realness to them. But the bullshit is outweighing the good shit, right? And it's always just keeping an eye on the grifters in our space because, again, we are this demographic. We, not me, the kids, are this young millennial demographic. Everybody wants their eyeballs, right? And so everybody is trying to pitch. And you just gotta be careful, right? It's always having to be on guard of like, oh God, why is this company here? Why are they here? Like if I hear 4 gamers, buy gamers, 2 gamers one more time, it's just like, oh God. Yeah, that's my rant on that, I guess, the things I hate. And that hasn't changed though in like 15 years of esports.
Okay,
Jason.
Cool. Jason.
All right. Well, I've already.
I gave you time to think about it.
Yeah, I know. I should have written them down. So I would say, like, I love, of course, like the crew is, you know, we got to handpick all the people that we work with. So it's not just me and Scott working together, which we love working together, but then it's, everybody from the video editor to social media to biz dev. Like, we actually went out to find them or say, hey, we've enjoyed working with you over the years, come and work with us in our studio. So that's been really fun. I really enjoy just the creative process of coming up with a new idea and trying to work out how to execute it and how we can add things to the wall and how we can make things more interesting and more exciting. That's just always a fun challenge to deal with, even with taking a game that nobody's done before and then trying to figure out how to broadcast it is, still my favorite thing to work on. Third thing, I love the adrenaline rush of just being in a live production room of, you have your full team and they're all, when you say, all right, heading over to commercial break, well, there's six people all need to do certain things all at the exact same time. Who's cueing the music and dropping mics and bringing up the next graphic and cueing the commercial break, and everybody just working and executing perfectly at that right time. That's just, once you get that rhythm down, it's just so much fun. That's what I really enjoy. What I hate,
now the hating.
what I hate, I would say, it's a creative space, but it's also an attention to detail space. So there's just so much things that can go wrong and so many little things that have to happen perfectly. Just getting that down. I wouldn't say I hate it, but that is a lot of work. It's just getting that one little piece of content on the air at the exact time that you want it. It just takes a little bit. So that can be a little challenging. We're pretty hour friendly, like our hours are pretty friendly right now, but once you do a live tournament, you're doing 12 to 16 hour days every day. So that can be a little rough. What else is the last thing I hate?
People being late.
People being late. There's nothing more I hate than somebody being late. I would say that the thing that, it's just kind of like the world of content. Like, there's so much stuff out there that sometimes you can make something that's really, really great and you spend a lot of time on it and nobody watches it. And then there's something you can do that you spend 5 minutes on as a joke. You do it in MS Paint and you put it up there and it blows up and, 600,000 people see this in just a weekend. And it's like, okay, that's part of the creative process, but it's like, the thing is, like, you always want your baby to be the thing that's the amazing thing, but that's just how it goes.
I got it. And on this last one, I really do feel you. My background is in graphic design, and I've got some similar stories with some of the logos I created. Like, the ones I put the most effort in are like the client would be like, eh. And the ones that went like a draft sketch, everybody was crazy about it. I love it. I'm like, come on, like, why?
Yep. Yeah, frustration.
I've got one more. It is relative to your work, but I want to have it like in one sentence. Both of your opinions on Microsoft taking Activision Blizzard. Don't shoot me.
You go first, Jason, this time.
I think, like, I'm not worried about monopoly in the space. I think one of the nice things about the gaming space is that, 4 people in their basement can come up with the next hit game. And, I would say the AB thing, or Microsoft buying them, is like Microsoft buying people's childhoods. They really are. They're buying that Warcraft game that people grew up on. They're, the StarCraft games. They own that IP, but overall in the gaming space, I mean, the last World of Warcraft expansion wasn't that good. So, can somebody make something to beat them, no matter how much money that, Microsoft throws into the next product? Yeah, I think really it can. So I'm not too worried about it. I think overall it's probably good for the employees. Let's get rid of Bobby because, fuck that guy.
Okay, then. All right. Yeah, you had to ask, didn't you? No, for me, mine, I guess, is far more, I guess, of a generic answer. The way I'm looking at the Microsoft stuff, and because we also had Sony just bought Bungie yesterday, right, for $3.6 billion or something. And what I think is happening is much like we've seen in some of the other mainstream industries, the food industry, the beverage industry, the alcohol industry, 5 companies owning all our food, all our beverage. You're seeing that in tech already with Amazon and Google in the sense of everything else they own. So when you start looking at like this picture, this chart of Microsoft and Sony and all these other, game developers and tech companies, it's all merging into several companies that own a whole lot of our stuff. I'm fine with it in the sense of them buying Activision Blizzard or Sony buying Bungie. I don't know if we'll see much of a blip on the day-to-day of Activision Blizzard in the sense of their games. I think the play is for the IP, like Jason mentioned, in a way, because we now see it's really an interesting thing, Alex, and it's a longer answer than you wanted. But like 20 years ago, someone made a game, someone made a really terrible movie of the game, right? And that was it. That was our crossover. Games lived over here, entertainment way over here. We would have a shitty Street Fighter movie. We would have a shitty Doom movie. Never a good combination of good movie, good game, right? But now we're seeing IP spinning the opposite way. Games making really good TV shows, like that Arcane series by Riot on Netflix, right? So this IP, and the other way, you'd have Star Wars as an IP, and they'd make shitty game after shitty game after shitty game after shitty game because someone paid the IP rights holder a lot of money to make the shitty games, right? So now they're getting better at both, right? And what I really like to see is when the game IP is now making entertainment content, right? And you're going to see a lot more of that, right? So I think Microsoft is getting into it because of all the IP that Activision Blizzard owns in the World of Warcraft universes, all these universes, right? And what will they do? Will Activision Blizzard stuff start showing up in Minecraft, right? Because again, they own Minecraft, right? They bought Mojang years ago for lots of money, right? Will they start using Activision Blizzard to make educational stuff like they do with Minecraft for kids, right? Well, how will they start doing this weird stuff? Again, long answer. Not worried about it. I just see more of a consolidation by the big boys of tech, and all the stuff we consume is all going to be owned again, one way or another, by a couple people. A couple companies. I'll be drinking my Coke, which will be owned by the same company that made my monitor that I'm typing an email to from. Yeah. In the multiverse, it'll all be the same. And Do Not Peek will be right there for all of your multiverse needs. Whatever you need, we're there for you.
You might be onto something, Scott. You might be onto something. Thanks, guys, very much for this really fun and insightful discussion. I really hope this is something new. We haven't talked about this before, but I really do hope to have the opportunity to catch you for our upcoming tech conference. We're gonna keep in touch on the matter. We're gonna have a gaming dedicated panel, and I would really love to have you guys there. Okay. But for the moment, thank you very, very much for taking the time to join us. And I want to thank to our audience as well. Remember, you can jump on HIPTHER.com/podcast to choose your favorite platforms. We have over 15 platforms, plus the YouTube channel where you can see the guys live. So thank you guys very much, and keep in touch.
Thank you for joining. Be sure to check back next week for the next HIPTHER Talks, and subscribe on Amazon Music, Overcast, Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, Mixcloud, and Pandora.